What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Coachable Podcast. On this week's episode, I am joined by the award-winning poet, multi-platinum songwriter, and best-selling author of Inquire Within, InQ. His groundbreaking achievements include being named to Oprah's Super Soul 100 list of the world's most influential thought leaders, being the first spoken word artist to perform in the Cirque du Soleil show, and being featured on A&E, ESPN, and HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam. He's inspired countless audiences around the world, live and virtually, through his performances and storytelling workshops, and many of his recent poetry videos have gone viral with over 70 million views combined. And his stand-up poetry special, InQ, live at the Ace Theater, is now streaming exclusively on Amazon Prime. I can tell you, I have been so giddy about this interview because I am such a huge fan of his, and have been for years since I came across his work. And it hits you like a ton of bricks when you hear him speak and you hear just his ability to express the deepest truths in himself and in the world. It is so profound, and it touches you. Truly, it really does. It makes you feel. It might make you emotional. It might make you think. It might make you laugh. But it's such a pleasure to get to sit down with him and talk about his creative process, about how, his upbringing inspired his ability to become such an award-winning artist, working with the likes of Disney, writing songs for Selena Gomez and Miley Cyrus, and on. The list of accomplishments and skills that this man has, it could go for forever. So I'm just so thrilled that you guys get to learn more about InQ. But before we do, I want to say thank you to one of our sponsors, Organifi, who is making my life so much easier in 2022 when it comes to making sure that I get the nutrients I need in my body. I've told you guys I am trying to balance my hormones after being on a hormonal IUD for the past, since I was 18 years old, so 12 years now, and all of the things and complications that happen internally when you've been pumping hormones into your body. Our cortisol levels can get out of whack. Obviously, our hormones can get out of whack as women, and it's really important for me this year to focus on my physical health and taking care of myself as best as possible. And if you're like me, you know the importance of eating healthy, but you don't always make time or have the willpower to cook with all of the colors of the rainbow. I know I certainly don't. I'm the quick fix, what's convenient. So I'm always looking for products that can help me supplement the nutrients that I'm not getting in my daily diet. And Organifi's superfood blends make it so easy and enjoyable. And all I have to do is add their delicious organic powder into water, stir it with a spoon, and enjoy at any time of my day and get energy, nutrition, hormone balance, and peace of mind in my glass. I'm so grateful to them, and they have been so generous to give this audience 20% off if you go to Organifi.com/Tori Gordon and use the code Tori20 at checkout. You're going to get 20% off all of your Organifi products, and they are the best way to jumpstart your morning, energize your afternoon, or nourish your evening. They're Organifi Green, Organifi Red, and Organifi Gold 3-pack is my go-to. I highly recommend it. So it gives you exactly what you need for all parts of your day. So go to Organifi.com/Tori Gordon. Use the code Tori20 at checkout to get 20% off your order. Without further ado, we're going to get into this week's episode with InQ. InQ, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Uh-oh, it's live now. The pressure's on.
Here we are.
I better change my personality.
I know. Put on the mask and do all the things,
Yeah.
I'm really glad to have this conversation with you. Honestly, I've been looking forward to talking to you since we set it up, and I have been a fan of yours for a couple years now, since I first came across your work on a podcast. And I'll be honest, I don't know if you're married or anything, and this is no disrespect if you are, but I have fallen in love with your mind and the way that you think and the way that you, obviously the way that you express yourself through your poetry. It's really beautiful. It's truly, it feels like it cuts through all of the noise that is there, and it just speaks straight to my heart and to my soul. And so I just acknowledge you for that, because it's a gift. It truly is a gift that you have. And I'm just excited to learn like where that comes from, and more about your story and how you've gotten to this point where you just share raw, true, like authentic words that can cut people, like in the best way. So like, tell me about that.
Yeah, it's really nice. First of all, I am married, and that was a very, very kind, sweet compliment that you gave me. And I'm glad that the poetry resonates with you. And what podcast did you hear me on? Man,
I think it was Aubrey Marcus.
Okay, big shout out to Aubrey.
Yeah, I think it was Aubrey's show. And I think you've been on, I don't know if I've listened, I probably listened to both of those episodes. And I remember hearing one of them and just feeling like, wow, that felt more true to me than a lot of things that I've heard in a long time. And your ability to articulate feeling and emotion and just truth, like your truth, but also just like in some of your poems, just universal truths, spiritual truths. It's really unique. So I'd love you to share, like, when did you get started with this form of art in terms of poetry? Because I know you're also a songwriter, you're an author, but how did you come into loving poetry?
So I started out writing raps when I was like 14 years old, and that's where InQ comes from. It was originally Inquiry, and my buddy named me that as an MC because I was always just very curious, asking questions about everything and everyone. And then that kind of got shortened to InQ, and then people started calling me Q. And then I pretty much rarely heard my real name after that. And then when I was 19 years old, I wound up at an open mic for poets in LA called the Poetry Lounge. And it turned out to be one of the biggest open mics in the country. So they were getting 350 people every Tuesday night that would show up and basically sit in the audience and watch the people that signed up on the open mic list get up and perform one at a time. And it was like a religious experience, like truly. It was the first place that I saw people being celebrated for being vulnerable or talking about social issues publicly like that. And I just fell in love with the expression and the community. I got up, I was doing my rapping a cappella, nobody corrected me. And all of us were kind of like heavily influenced by hip hop. And so it was a natural progression. And then, over the years of coming back every single Tuesday night, I ended up being on HBO's Def Poetry Jam, and my team won the National Poetry Slam Championships. And so one day I woke up and I realized I was more of a poet than a rapper, and then I had to figure out how to make a living. And it was a long, winding road, but now I get to travel around the country and the world, or do digital shows since the pandemic, and I perform for people everywhere, and it's awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said something that stuck out to me, which was that it, like, being celebrated for vulnerability really, made an impact on you. And I don't think that there are many places where we feel that, and that it was also like a religious experience. Because as soon as you said that, that was the feeling that I got listening to you, which was, it was almost like going to church, but not going, but with all the none of the churchiosity, none of the religiosity, but with all the truth, and that power behind it. Like, where, like, as a child, when you started rapping, what inspired your self-expression? And what was it that, like, when you got started, was there something specific that you like wanted to say that you felt like you could only say through writing or through rap?
Yeah, I mean, my mom's a school teacher. My father was not around at all, so she, raised me on her own. I didn't even meet him until I was a teenager, and then we didn't develop a real relationship. So I think I had a lot of unresolved kind of emotion surrounding that, and then various other things that I was going through at the time that I just didn't really know how to express, and I think all of that ended up coming out through rhyming and rhythm. I'd say freestyling specifically at the beginning because it was just the fastest way to connect to the moment, because you couldn't think about anything else but the next line and the next rhyme. And so it brought me into the world where I think, for the most part, I felt removed from the world. I felt like I was observing the world. I felt like I was observing myself. And so this was something that empowered me. And then ultimately, I think it's become a source of alchemy for me, writing and performing in general. We're all storytellers. And so it's like the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell other people become our lives, individually and collectively. When I do poetry workshops, I try to remind the audience of that, because people don't view themselves as poets, or they don't view themselves as artists. And so when they become adults, they usually stop playing. And playing is where vitality comes from. You have to play in your life, otherwise you're going to calcify. And if you calcify, you die faster. So there's something to be said for all of us looking at our lives like art and reminding ourselves that we're artists, and playing with the stories that we tell the world.
Well, isn't that a refreshing way to look at life? Because you're right, we don't see ourselves that way a lot of times, and play is kind of conditioned out of most of us, and we think it's not productive or it's not useful. And one of the things you mentioned just a minute ago was that freestyling brought you into the present moment, that it required you to be with what was so that you could be with the next line. And when I think about art of any form, because I grew up in a family of musicians. My dad is toured with Motown groups from all over the country, and he'll be in the Alabama Music Hall of Fame. He has his own record label. Now he's out in LA right now recording a record. My mom was a classical pianist and traveled, and they were both really amazing.
That must have been so cool to grow up that way.
Yeah, it really was. So, in my elementary school years, I went to a school where art, theater, language there was such an emphasis on it. I didn't get my first grade until I was in middle school. And so that was a really interesting way to grow up. So there was a huge emphasis on the arts, as well as education. But I think as soon as I got into this structured education system, that was sort of started to be kind of conditioned out of me. And now grades and standard, test scores and all standardized tests, all of that is more important than your expression and your playfulness and all of that. And so I've even noticed in my own life, it's having to unlearn the stories that I've told myself about the use of play in my life, and actually intentionally create space for that creativity to come through. Because I don't know how you see it, but for me in my life, it feels like this faucet. Creativity is like a faucet that I can, when you turn it on, it can, a lot can come out, or it's just dripping barely. And for a lot of my life, it's just kind of barely dripped. Especially in college and all that, I was so disconnected from it. And now I feel such a desire and like call to turn that back on, but it also feels like it's going to require a level of presence and creating space for that to come, to like reconnect with that part of me. And from, I think most of society, we don't necessarily value that in the use of that in our lives and how that can connect us with each other, with ourselves, and with deeper truths. What is your relationship to your creativity, and what does creativity kind of mean to you, I guess?
Well, yeah, just to your previous point, I mean, it definitely takes some effort. Part of the thing about play is oftentimes you're not good at it, whatever that thing is. And so as you get older and you find something you're good at and you get paid for that specific thing, it feels good. You get some expertise in life and you create your own little world and you got your little ego, you got your thing. And I'm talking to myself first, by the way. I'm not clowning anybody, but it's just a part of the human experience. And then why would you want to do some shit that you weren't good at? I mean, right? But as a kid, you're forced to do that because you're really not good at anything.
Right. You'd have no previous skill sets to lean on.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And you're not forced to make a living. You have no responsibilities. Not to say the kids don't go through some real stuff in their lives, but they have no direct financial responsibilities usually, and they're not often in charge of their own time. So their time is being scheduled for them, and they have to fit into the familiar structure that they came into or the societal structure wherever they live. So it's like, my point is that in doing that, they're always kind of out of control to a certain extent. And as I said, they're not good at anything, so they're trying a bunch of things to see what they're good at and just to like learn about themselves and to learn about life and to gain skills. But then we get to a certain point and we're like, well, I got this. And so we stop doing those other things that we're not good at because we don't want to be embarrassed or look stupid or, But that's the way we grow, is by looking embarrassed and looking stupid and doing things we're not good at and learning new things about ourselves. And when we stay in the same routine, we don't get that opportunity. So I think creativity is just an avenue to express different parts of yourself. Like if I think of why we're all here, I don't have a specific answer because clearly I'm just making it up like everybody else is. But I think that the purpose of life is the expression of life. Like if I had to guess, that would be it. Because we're all alive, right? And for you or I or anybody to have been born, we were pretty much in a race against 350 million sperm. And we won. And we're miracles. And we don't have to do anything or, be anything or make anything or own anything to have self-worth. It's just kind of being where we are and expressing the uniqueness of your human fingerprint on this earth. And that can change over time. That's why I don't even believe in like truth. I believe in momentary truth. Language is not truth. It's a reflection of the momentary truth at its best. But there's different ways to express that momentary truth. And I think all forms of art or movement have unique pockets that they can decompress in our lives, like in terms of like either stress or just unresolved emotions or things from our past. And then the more that we express those things, the more present we can be in the world and the more that we can connect with the world and other people.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you say, I think the meaning like of life is the expression of life, what came to mind for me was like looking around at the other forms of life that exist all around us, like trees and the earth, and like seeing the way it expresses itself in its cyclical patterns, and but also how like a seed, like a sperm, has everything it needs kind of at the beginning of time to become the fullest expression of itself. But
Totally.
what determines whether or not it does is the environment that you put it in. Right? And it's,
That's right.
so I think the world that we live in our culture, in our society, has created an environment that says, no, don't express your uniqueness. Be like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, but you could also argue that like American culture actually, it does both. Because it does suppress our uniqueness, but we're also living in a very capitalistic society that is based on competition and says rise to the top and be the best you can be. There's something called the tall poppy syndrome in like Australia, where they always cut the tallest poppies. I'm pretty sure that's it. If I'm wrong,
Okay.
then you can eviscerate me online. But I know the concept is they cut off like the top of the poppies or the sunflowers or whatever, because they want them all to be even. Where in America, rise as far as you can towards the sun. So I think it's both. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if the grass is greener on the other side, but it's either way, it's still grass. You got to.
No, I agree. I think what I was speaking to is kind of, maybe this is more popularized culture on like social media and that kind of thing. It's like everything needs to look a certain way, and
Sure.
I remember in college, and this is a while back now, but like all the girls dressed in the same, like everybody dressed a certain way, and maybe that's just part of tribalism, almost like we want to blend in and we want to be part of. We want to belong, and we're kind of representing like, hey, these are my people. Whether it's you do it with sports teams, you do it in all different ways. Right. But celebrating uniqueness in the same way, celebrating vulnerability is oftentimes, in my experience, less prominent, I guess. And I wonder why so many of us struggle with our own self-expression, whether that's, and we were talking about this before we started recording, like expressing boundaries and like making, expressing our truth and saying, hey, this isn't going to work for me, or expressing ourselves through poetry or a piece of music or some kind of art form, whatever that looks like. Do you feel like it's easier for some of us, like to not go there within ourselves, because it's putting your most raw, a true form of expression out there and allowing, kind of putting it out there for the judgment of other people, and also the, the celebration and welcoming of other people. But depending on maybe the story that you tell yourself about that determines whether or not you think it's a safe, good idea to express yourself. What do you think about that?
It also depends upon what you're focused on. Like yesterday, I put out a video, and, I think, 30-something thousand people have watched this video. And this one dude, I was looking through the comments, all these positive, awesome comments. This one dude who doesn't even follow me, by the way, he goes, is it just me, or does this dude looks like he has abs on his neck? Now, I hadn't even noticed, but now I'm watching the video, and I'm like, oh, my God. First of all, I thought it was hilarious, because I was kind of like, wow, I kind of see what he was saying. But then I was like, who is this dude that decided to take his time to watch a piece of content that someone that he's never met put out into the world, this heartfelt thing that's really just meant to connect people to a deeper part of their hearts. And so I went and clicked on his page. His first picture is him holding a gun, AR-15, AR-15, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, like this at the camera. He's just pointing it at the camera.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's who this is. Like, he's really just talking to himself. Like, he's just kind of like not happy with where he is, and he just sees an opportunity to clown somebody for no reason. So he just kind of puts it out. So I'm like, block, you know, not that I care. I actually thought what he said was funny.
Sure.
But like, I have never once in my entire life commented negatively on someone else's piece of content. Because all content is an attempt at creation in the world. It's so much easier to hate than it is to create. Instead of, you know, taking that moment to shit on me for no reason, he should go create something on his own. You know, instead of tearing something down, try building something. But that's just not where this human being is.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe we're scared of that because there's a lot of other people out there who can, you know, tear us down, and it certainly doesn't feel good.
Sure.
And it's funny that like now on the podcast, I'm telling the one story about one dude who said one thing when there were so many other people who said the most amazing things.
Right.
Then I got a message yesterday from this other guy who left me this message, and he's like, hey man, he's like, I heard you live like 4 years ago at a show in Ohio, Cleveland. And he goes, I just want to tell you that it changed my life. It's like, I heard you perform. I was in a really specific place. He left a voice message. And he was like, it made me like actually make some real changes. And he goes, I just want you to know we've never met, but like your work has been really meaningful for me. So he said this thing. Now I remember this show, Tori, okay?
Okay.
I have to tell you the story of the show. It was 8 a.m. in the morning, okay?
Okay.
And I had flown in the night before from Los Angeles, which means it's 3 hours back. So it was really out 5 in the morning would be when I was performing.
Right.
Right? And I meditate, which means I had to wake up at 4 in the morning my time. So I wake up at 4 in the morning my time, like groggy, I meditate, go into the bathroom to shave. I'm like shaving, and I cut this little mole here, okay? Because I was tired. Now, if you ever cut a mole, it bleeds profusely. It just won't stop bleeding, okay? So now it's like 4:30 in the morning, my time, 7:30 their time. I'm going on in a half an hour. It's right downstairs. I'm bleeding profusely. I'm like, get a paper towel, bleed right through it. Get another paper towel, bleed right through it. I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck am I going to do? I put toothpaste on it. I'm just trying to do anything. It doesn't work. Now it's 7:40. They're starting to text me. Where are you? 700 people downstairs. So I call the front desk. I'm like, hey, do you guys have any Band-Aids? Like, you know, they send this guy up. He has like a first aid kit. And he opens, he comes in. I'm like, put a Band-Aid on, bleed through it. Put another Band-Aid on, bleed through it. So eventually, I had to get one of these like large bandages that covered my face like this. Okay? I hadn't thought about this until the guy sent me the message yesterday. So I'm like this, okay? I go downstairs. I had been hired by this guy named Mr. DeJulius. And they were paying me a significant amount of money. I couldn't make this up. So I go downstairs. It's now 8:01. I'm like running to get in. They're freaking out. I go up to the table, and I'm like, hey. And this guy comes out from behind the table for whatever, the microphones and stuff like that. He starts screaming, get him on the stage. Get him on the stage right now. And I go, hey, man, don't talk to me like that. And I said, don't talk to them like that. but it's so funny that I literally am talking to somebody with this giant bandage on my face. So he's like, and he like walks away. And I think it's just the guy behind the table. So then they bring me on stage, I grab a mic, I go up. Now, usually it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, right? Because 700 people, I'm just on stage, it'd be like this. Except they had these giant TV screens.
Oh, wow.
So I'm doing the whole show like, have you ever been excited for now? Like, it was so bad to me, okay? Mm-hmm. It was like one of the worst shows I had had.
Oh, wow. I
didn't feel great. I'm doing like 45 minutes, like doing my soulful poetry, giant screens.
Right.
You know, I get off stage. I go to the woman, hey, sorry about that. You know, as I'm leaving, I was like, I apologize again. You know, and I said, please tell the guy I'm sorry as well, you know, the sound guy. And she goes, that's not the sound guy. That's Mr. DeJulius.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, oh, hey, you shouldn't have talked to people like that. So I leave. Now, the point is, I thought this was horrible. Mm-hmm. It was one of my worst shows. And 4 years later, this dude tells me that it changed his perspective on his life. Mm. So your worst day can be somebody's best day.
Yeah.
And just because you don't hear the feedback doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because you get negative feedback doesn't mean it's even about you.
So true.
So why contain your life to somebody's real or imaginary criticism or compliments? Mm-hmm. It's just exhausting, it's boring, and it's not actually you expressing the true beauty of your life, which is the purpose of your life.
Right. Well, and if that's what you do it for, you know, it's for the praise or for the applause or just so people will like you or vice versa, you know, that will keep you in this prison of doing things because you think you should or need to, or not doing things because you're afraid of being judged. Right. And when you talk about that guy, you know, who left that comment on your video, when you were saying you went to his page and like the first picture is like him holding a gun, the first thing that came to my mind is like, what are you trying to defend, buddy? You know, like what, because what I hear in that is I'm attacking you, like not literally, like, or physically, but with my words. I'm coming at you like with my comment. And the next thing you see is I'm holding a gun. Like, this is a person whose expression shows that he feels the need to attack others in some way, or like, why do you hold a gun unless you need to defend yourself or unless you're going to do something with it, right? And so, and it's maybe that's taking it too far, looking too far into it, but I think the way we express, even if it's unconsciously, we don't know what we're really sometimes saying when we make a comment, or how that really reveals something in us more about, you know, the state that we're in than the video. It has nothing to do with the video, right? It's revealing something about him.
Yeah, totally. And probably, to be quite honest, if he met me in another circumstance, he'd fucking love me.
Yeah.
Because,
exactly.
You know, if you go to my page, it's really all about, you know, love, there's inspiration, there's challenging stuff as well, because I talk about social and political issues or things that I'm passionate about that people agree or disagree with, and that's perfectly fine. I actually don't mind if people disagree. I want them to disagree. I want them to think about their own beliefs and challenge mine. But if you're just talking shit, you know, you could just go do it somewhere else.
Sure.
And the reality is most people that I meet in the world, despite all the division online, most people that I meet are awesome. You know, I travel all over and I rarely have a bad experience. I mean, people are actually usually really cool and they're all just kind of doing their best. And, you know, we have different ideas and, you know, different circumstances, but we all have the human experience in common.
Yeah, I know. And just talking about how, like, what you think might be terrible in terms of whether it's your show or a piece of content that you just created or whatever, and like, no one's going to watch this, no one's going to listen to this, but it really might, you know, you don't know the impact that it might have on somebody else. That's how I got started on TikTok, and getting onto TikTok kind of gave me this reset in terms of I had to think about how do I actually want to express myself on this platform, because I hadn't been used to doing video before. I had kind of just been doing what was normal over on Instagram. And so I had to be more thoughtful about what I wanted to say or how I wanted to share it. But what took off on TikTok was not my overly curated perfect video. It was the stuff that I thought would never do well. Like me walking my dog at midnight, making a video where it's basically dark outside, but I'm just like speaking from my heart, and that blows up. And it's my own judgment that might keep me from posting that or actually thinking that it's going to do anything. And then seeing the response, it's like, people are craving that authentic expression across platforms and just in our day-to-day lives. And I think that's what you do so well. It's like you address these important and sometimes controversial topics, but it's raw, and it makes people feel something within themselves that maybe they don't know how to tap into in any other way. And that is, for a lot of us, it's like the catalyst, that inspiration that lights something in us. It's like, I'd love to be able to like be so bold as to share something that means that much to me and be willing to put it out into the world.
But you do, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, feels like you are doing that, and I mean, it's just different forms of the same thing. It just the different forms of expressing the life force, basically. That you have I mean, and I encourage people to write poetry, and I encourage people to go dance. I mean, I don't really do that, but I used to break dance at bar mitzvahs for a living when I was like 19. I was horrible, but I could impress the shit out of a 13-year-old Jewish kid. And we had a whole crew called EIE. I'm Jewish, by the way, so I can kind of say that. And yeah, man, we would do flips and all sorts of crazy stuff. And every single weekend I would do these bar mitzvahs. And I got tired of dancing. I was like, when you do something for money, and then you do it when you don't want to do it.
Yep.
And then because you've done it when you don't want to do it, when you can do it, you're like, I don't want to do it. Like it kind of stole my joy. So that was like a weird lesson I learned. And I made sure that I didn't do that with poetry. Even though I do it for a living, poetry gives me joy. It doesn't ever steal my joy. I don't even think that's here or there, but for some reason it came
that's
up in my
interesting
mind.
because I in college I had a photography business. I thought I wanted to be a photographer, and I actually did the last photo shoot I did was of my sister when she was sick with leukemia, and she was bald, and it was a really beautiful photo shoot. But something about that shoot made me I didn't love it anymore. And specifically, I actually did a film photography class in college, and that stole my joy because it had to be a certain way. But I know what you mean by doing something like when you don't want to do it, it takes the fun out of it. And I'm curious, like, how did you manage to intentionally not do that with poetry? Because I know that there are people who listen to this show, whether they're content creators, entrepreneurs, they're following some kind of passion of theirs. And this is definitely the case on social media. As a content creator, it starts out fun and then it becomes a business. And then you're like, okay, I'm getting paid to do this. And now it's no longer fun anymore. How did you keep the inspiration alive and not let it kind of suck you dry of all of the creative like juice that you have and all of the like the joy that it brings and not make it feel like a job.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts to it. There's the creation part, and then there's the presentation part. From the standpoint of, like, for me, there's a specific piece of art that I'm creating, and then there's the vehicle for it. Like, how do I give it away to the world? So, like, you know, when I created the book, that is a vehicle and a presentation for an amalgamation of a bunch of poems that I had already created. And I put them into the book, and I had a conceptual through line and called it Inquire Within because it had a theme. And so that's one way. Another way is videos, or the special that I did with Amazon, which is InQ Live at the Ace. Like that, these are vehicles. They're presentations of the art. So I'll start with the first part. When I'm creating a piece of art, I'm creating the art for myself first. And that's always been something that's been in my DNA. I've never thought about the audience while I'm creating. There's other people who are, you know, they approach creativity differently. And I respect it. I don't begrudge anyone whatever path they walk towards bringing something into the world. But that's just never felt natural to me. Like, I start with something that I'm curious about, or something that pisses me off, or something that moves me, or something that inspires me, and then I build a poem from there. And oftentimes, if I give it enough time and space, the poem will almost write itself. I'm usually surprised at where it goes by the end of it. And I also always give myself the right not to share it. Like, some things I just create for myself, and they don't really see the light of day, but they're still important to me and worthwhile. And so I think that's the foundation. And then the second part, the presentation, is where even it's confusing. It's like, because once I put it out into the world, I want it to be successful. Right. I want to live an abundant lifestyle. I want to get validation. My ego, of course, still wants to be, you know, recognized and all this stuff. So then it winds up being almost like a strategy of, how do I release this thing in order to connect with the audience? And I got to tell you, at this stage in my career, I've started to take the philosophy from the creation and move it over to the presentation. Whereas, like, for a long time in the presentation, I think I was just thinking too much. And I think in thinking too much, I was actually getting in my own way. And so I can relate to what you were saying about just kind of like walking your dog at midnight and just kind of saying what you want to say. Because I've kind of like just started doing that with my poems, and people are responding really well, because that's, for the most part, why people are fans of me. You know, they get the book, or they see me on stage, or they watch the special, and when they come to my social media, they just want my poetry. And so I think I've been over strategizing it. And I would suggest to anyone that's listening to this, first, when you're creating, just create for yourself. Do something that lights you up. Because if it lights you up, I promise it will light other people up. Yeah. Not everybody. Somebody might hold an AR-15, you know, towards your social media or talk shit. But you know, if it's true to you, it will be true to many others. Yeah. And then maybe try to do the same thing in the presentation of it. Just allow it to be raw and real, and also realize that our comparison points are really skewed. You know, what's a good example? If I put something out, you know, I've had a viral video that had 40 million views. Okay. Wow. So if I put out a video and it gets 30,000 views, or 7,000 views, or 1,000 views, or 100 views, whatever it is, it's easy for me to compare it to these incomprehensible numbers.
Right.
And I go, oh, it's not as blah, blah, blah. But the point is, if I was speaking to 100 people, what a gift that is. If 10 people are actually like consuming something that's meaningful to you, you know, you don't know how that's going to impact them or what seed you just planted in their mind or in their heart or in their life. Yeah. Maybe 4 years from now, somebody's going to say, oh, that thing that you did was so, right? So I guess the point that I'm making is just, you know, create for yourself and then release it for yourself and then let it go and allow it to live for other people and see what happens.
I love that. I love that. That puts such a spin on the way I've, you know, especially in the like personal brand space, we've been taught to create content. It's like, what does your audience want? Like, create for your audience. And I love that you're taking that back, because it's felt so unnatural to me to do that. And it's felt like when I, there's a completely different feeling when I create for myself as opposed to creating for somebody else. And it feels like when I do it for somebody else, I step outside of myself and I lose myself in that way of trying to put myself in someone else's shoes and create for them. And it loses its power, or it's just watered down, or it's not as sharp, or something about the energy of it. It's just not as clear and like, and yeah, I think if that wasn't for anybody else, it was for me, as a reminder of just like, I'm consciously creating more space and time in my business for that, because I want to do things from a place of inspiration and not desperation, or because I think this is a place, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. No, but this is what's inside of me and I want to get it out. And there will be other people that, you know, also relate to that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend, Mike Posner. He's an artist and a songwriter and a poet. And he has this kind of like philosophy that he's also an adventurer, actually. He's like hiked Mount Everest and walked across America. Anyway, the philosophy that he has is like, if an artist is successful, at a certain point they stop being an artist and they start becoming a brand ambassador. They're like basically protecting their brand all the time. And you can even see that just if you were to take age demographics in life. You know, we were talking about play earlier. Well, in your 20s, you're still probably playing because you don't have so much to protect.
Sure.
And then you get into your 30s and 40s, you know, whatever it is, you wind up having more that you've built, so you have more to protect. And you wind up being a brand ambassador of whatever life you've created. So it's, you know, it's not only for artists and it's not only on social media, it's everywhere. And I think that it just brings us back to that idea of play. Mike was saying that he purposely burns down his brand like every 3 or 4 years, because then he doesn't have anything to protect and he can continue to explore.
Yeah.
And I love that, you know. I think it is scary, of course, to like do something that's out of the ordinary or not what people expect from you, you know, whether you're a content creator or whether you are a school teacher. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
But I the point is that once again, that's how we grow.
Yeah, and it takes us back to...
That's how we have new experiences.
It takes us back to what we were saying in the beginning, which is when you're a child, like, you have no skills or responsibilities to, like, fall back on, so you're just exploring. And you said your friend Mike is an adventurer. Like, that's all kids are doing, is, like, exploring, adventuring, figuring out, like, what they like. And I think that process of intentionally creating space for us just to go explore again and is important, instead of getting pigeonholed into the way we've done things and this is the brand and this is the way it has to be done, and then just protecting what you've built. It's like, no, let's start over from scratch. And it's like a writer starting with a blank page over again. It's like you wrote the poem and then, okay, now you're looking at a blank page and you're not going to write the same poem twice. You're going to write something new. And
yeah, because otherwise then you just wind up saying, what does my audience want?
yeah.
And that's like, you know, strategic inspiration. It's like one step away from manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're manipulating your audience, you're manipulating yourself first.
And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And that's why listening to you, reading your work, it feels like this just breath of fresh air when you're just surrounded by a lot, in my industry, with a lot of focus on performance metrics and how's something doing, how's something performing, how many people are listening. Like, just going back to the reason we started creating in the beginning, which was there was something I wanted to share, and sharing from that space. So I would love it if you would be so willing to give people a taste of that breath of fresh air and share one of your poems.
Sure. Let's see. I want to find something new because it'll be fun for me. Okay. The darkness doesn't consume me anymore. It just reminds me of where I was before. It's an open door. Everything you're afraid of is a closed door inside your body. And there are endless corridors for almost everybody. Me, I'm in an empty lobby sifting through a pile of locks trying to be somebody. You want to change somebody. Me, I want to free somebody. Me, but I have to be seen so I can see somebody. See? I'll try to make this crystal clear like a chandelier. Between projections and reflections, we are walking mirrors. This isn't poetry, it's prayers in disguise. I had to borrow your eyes. I had to realize just how many lives we live in our lives. I had to realize I could die and still survive my demise. I've been to countless funerals, and lately all of them mine, dancing over landmines in tumultuous times. I'll shoot a bullseye blind, then draw a chalk outline and fit infinity into the spaces. I want to take off mine and try on 8 billion faces. I want to wander in the desert dry until I have to look inside for the oasis. I cry myself to sleep at night and dream of trading places. Emotion's energy in motion, so it has to move. It has to flow or it gets trapped and has to be removed. It has to go or has to transform to something else. It has to decompose to grow and take a different self. That's universal health. I opened up the doors and felt the breeze come pouring in. I stepped outside to greet the sunlight against my skin. I pushed against the wind like I was being born again, but couldn't differentiate between the storm within. My chakras started glowing as if by divine design. The only light that's showing now is from the neon sign that read, "To get ahead in life is also to be left behind." I'm here to testify, express myself, then step aside, because I believe in humankind. That's why I'm kind to humans. Our architectural designs are going to wind up ruins. But I'm a realistic optimist. I make a living off of talking shit. You can find me in a forest or a metaverse metropolis. I'd put my money on utopia over apocalypse, though both would be accomplishments. It's the joys of consciousness. Life is so mysterious. We don't need to understand. We need to go experience. Open up your heart, open up your mind, open up your eyes, open up your lives, open up to life. There's a world outside just beyond your sight. Go explore. There is more. Open up your doors, open up your pores, pour your life force into the source. Open up your cores, turn your metaphoric ceilings into floors. Stay the course, let it course through your veins. Open up to pain, open up to change. Open up until you actualize your dreams. Open everything and nothing at the very same same time. Open up to all the darkness that it takes to make you shine. Open up your body, spirit, and your soul. Open up the parts of you that make you whole. You're alive, and that's the goal. You survived despite the obstacles you had to face before. So let before be before. Open up the fucking doors.
Wow. That is so good. What was that called?
I don't know. I just wrote it.
Oh, really? I was like, I don't know that one. Is that new? It is.
Yeah, it's like a month old. I haven't really performed it live for anyone. I've done it on a podcast before, but I haven't performed it, for anyone else. So it's nice to share it because that's how I get familiar with my new pieces. It's like get them to a place where I love them, and then I start to share it, and I see how it feels, as I'm giving it away.
It's something you said in that about we don't need understanding, we need experience. Really stood out to me.
You know where I got that from?
Where?
The movie Dune.
Really?
There's this part, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, but there's a part where there's like a dream sequence, and one of the characters is says something to the effect of, life isn't meant to be understood, it's meant to be experienced.
Yeah. That speaks to me because I think as humans we crave certainty. We're just always looking to be to have this certainty that's impossible to have because life is in its truest form is uncertain. And if we can allow ourselves to release the need to understand and figure it out and know what's going to happen next and just be present and experience, our experience will give way to understanding a lot more than we did before.
Yeah, totally. The only thing that's certain is uncertainty.
Yeah. You mentioned in that the metaverse and how things are moving. How do you, I know you talk a lot in your work about spiritual concepts, and I know you have spiritual practices. I know you're a avid meditator, and you've done a lot of awesome work on yourself. I'm just curious, how do you feel in the way that we're going as a culture and society and where things are headed into the metaverse and being connected, but also for many of us feeling super disconnected? How do you stay connected to your source given the environment, whether it's political, cultural, all the things that are happening, even in technology in that space? How do you stay connected to that source within you and keep your relationships and your connections authentic and alive?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. People think happiness is a point. It's not a point, it's a range. It's just you stay inside of a certain range. Mm-hmm. And if you go too far outside of it, you're going to dip into unhappiness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a destination, it's a journey. So the presence is the same thing. It's a range. Mm-hmm. And it's a practice, and I'm constantly practicing. And sometimes I get outside of the range as well and try not to beat myself up when I do, and then try to remind myself or take particular actions to bring myself back into the range where I feel this is where I want to be. Mm-hmm. As much as I possibly can, because it helps me tap into my empowerment and ultimately my potential.
Mm-hmm. Have you always been gifted with a way with words, or has that been something that you've honed and worked on over the years as you've worked on this obviously as a skill? You have so much talent, but you've also really honed this skill too. I mean, your ability to express concepts and ideas with language, I think for so many it feels challenging. It's like, I don't have the right words. Has that just always kind of been natural to you, or are there any practices that you do that help you to like find the words that you want to say? And how long does that, like, what is your creative process like? I know you write for yourself, but does it take a while to write a poem like that, or does it come in like a flood and you kind of just write it down and it's done pretty quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, I think I was probably naturally inclined to communication. But it's also a muscle that I've like certainly like built up over time. And then poetry is a skill that I've worked on, you know, definitely beyond my outlier hours. So, but it was like a process. And I've had all sorts of different writing practices over the years, but now I just write when I have something to say, because I've already kind of put in those hours. So it's almost like if I have an assignment, I write, or if I'm genuinely inspired. And then it will usually come within like a week. If I write something, you know, that I like and I kind of get into the puzzle of it, I want to figure it out. So I think I wrote that one in like probably 2 sessions of maybe like 3 hours, 4 hours or something like that. But then I also like have to memorize it usually and get it to a place where like it's fun and I can kind of like experiment in real time with it. You know, I got to memorize it in a way that's like cellular, so I can do it on stage and But if you're not in the practice of paying attention to what inspires you and finding an art form to express it, then you have to actually like write it into your schedule. You know, like put it in your calendar as like a specific routine, like you would have a workout or like you would go to the hairdresser or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, it's become, for me, I've actually sort of built some of that time into my morning routine because I feel most connected in the morning because it's part of my kind of looped in with some of my meditation and breath work and other things that I do. And that it feels sacred that time now. It feels very almost ceremonial where it's like, this is part of me opening up this portal within me, and whether I share that or not, but it's, that's the time of day that I've started to dabble with that. And
Beautiful.
it feels, that feels like the truest, some of the truest, like things that I create and is a source for inspiration for everything else that I do. I remember specifically when I was reading your book or reading your poetry, as soon as I got your book, some of the poems that really stuck out to me, and one of them being Reincarnation, simply for the fact that I've lost many people in my life, and those listening know the story, and I've told it many times. But it's something that, really, really touched me, and I would love for you to read that one if you're willing to.
Yes. I have to actually read it, and then unfortunately I have a meeting that I have to.
Okay, we will wrap it up.
For, but I can definitely do Reincarnation.
Okay.
This is quite a poem. Okay. This is my book, by the way.
Yes,
Anybody who's interested.
I have mine as well.
Oh,
we will make
sweet.
sure everybody gets links to how they can get it, because I highly recommend. It's a great read.
Thank you. When I die, I imagine that it will be like waking up from a long dream. I'll stretch my arms and look around at all that was unseen. A world beyond the world our five senses perceive. My identity will be gone, yet somehow I'll feel relieved. It's always gotten in the way of the connection that I crave. Now that everything is energy, I gladly ride the wave. It's easier when you don't have a self. You never misbehave. Plus, you never have to do the simple stuff like shit and shave. And you never have to worry about the money you didn't save. Up here, everything is free, and the moment is what pays. See, without the world of form, there is nothing to protect. Everyone is one, so love is not something that I project. It is all there is. Life was made to marvel at itself. I see that now that I don't have to play the cards that I was dealt. Wow, this place is so serene. It's ideal in every way. I can manifest ideas out of formless balls of clay, but since thoughts become reality, there's nothing to convey. So I'm silent to myself throughout my non-existent day. And infinity is watching when I close my eyes to pray, because even God prays to God, as crazy as that is to say. Plus, I'm not confined by time. Therefore, I'm early when I'm late, because my body has no boundaries for my spirit to escape. I am everywhere at once, undefined by any shape. The only rule I have is don't consume more than you can create. See, when you die, you download your hard drive and get erased. You become the empty space, and your memories and dreams echo endlessly in space, a collective clean slate. Life can only transform. It can never be replaced. And from this view, I look at you and think it's fun to watch you chase. Secretly, sometimes I even wish that I could take your place. I kind of miss the ups and downs, all the triumphs and mistakes, the science of the human state. There's a language to the universe, and most times it takes us lifetimes to translate. Then we can learn to speak our fate, to compassionately love or to compassionately hate. But the dichotomy is vast, so the suffering is great. We don't remember life's a mask, so we're dying to escape, and we're living to escape. And the pressure gets so heavy we don't even want to wait, getting crushed under the weight. We're so impatient that we try to bust the lock on heaven's gate. But there is no lock on heaven's gate. There is no line. There is no wait. There is no list for us to make. There's only bliss and only grace. And knowing this is kind of laced, I want to borrow someone's face. I want to have amnesia too, so I can take the ride like you. And in an instant, I'm being pushed into the light. I almost fit, but not quite. I hear a woman scream and fight. I try to help with all my might. The doctors pull me into life. I open up my eyes to sight. The room is big and bright and white. The nurses clean me with a wipe. They label me a gender type. I can't remember why I came. And then I hear her say my name. And suddenly, I feel an overwhelming calm. They wrap me in a blanket and place me in her loving arms. And for a moment, I'm alive and I know I belong. I look into her eyes, and once again, I meet my mom.
So good. So good.
I'm sorry for your loss, truly. Yeah.
It makes me emotional, but I love that imagery so much. And I feel like you just have such a gift for sharing your insights and your wisdom and helping us to connect with parts of us that we need to. And so thank you for sharing that with us and for me.
Well, thank you for having me. If I was in your, if we were in the same place, I would give you a hug. I'd give you a digital hug.
Yes, I
digital
take
hug.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing me with your community, and you can teach me how to blow up on TikTok. I need help.
Yes, we will. We will get you there. Everybody go follow NQ Life on TikTok and everywhere else. We are going to make sure that all of the links to connect with you further are in the show notes, and you guys go get Inquire Within. This book is, it's full of wisdom and poems that will make you cry and make you laugh and just make you feel home within yourself. And that is such a gift. So thank you for joining us. You're welcome back anytime. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you for showing us what it means to express ourselves and share our voice and why that matters. You guys go follow, go get the book. And if you are so willing, share this with a friend. I appreciate you for showing up every single week. Go be coachable. Until next week, I'll see you on the Coachable Podcast.